Hi, I'm Dr. Gerald Epstein. I'm glad to be with you today to talk to you about Western spirituality and all of the practices and principles that are inherent in it that we can use as an applied therapeutics to shape our everyday life and our reality, and to live in a life that's content, happy, peaceful, and specifically and most especially truth and freedom. I am a physician who was trained as a psychiatrist and as a psychoanalyst, and then initiated in 1974 into the Western spiritual tradition and onward into this apprenticeship that I did in imagination with my teacher in Jerusalem, Colette Aboulker, Muscat, from 1974 till 1983. I went back and forth 13 times to Jerusalem and for extended periods of time to become an apprentice to this tradition and in this tradition. And from that point on, I devoted my life to making a therapeutic practice out of the Western tradition to bring it to help you shape, as I mentioned, your everyday life situation. There has been I would say a great deal of information that I've shared with everyone. You'll find it on my website, on drgerryepstein.org. And there's a vast amount of information that I share with the general public that's always available and constantly updated for training in my way that's called imagination, phenomenology, and mental imagery. And my work is about the essential issues of life, which are life and death. That's the basic existential matters that are really at the heart of everyone's life. And I've developed and focused my life work in dealing with exploring the matters of life and death, drawing on a central point of the Western spiritual wisdom, which is stated in the text of the Bible that says that in Deuteronomy that God mentions to the people, at every moment I set before you life and death, good and evil, choose. And that struck me. It overwhelmed me when I realized the import of it, because it said that we are able to choose one path or the other, that we can choose a life path or a death path. So what I'm sharing with you are the ways that I've discovered to allow you to choose a life path, understand what a life path is, and reverse the attachments that are creating for us the suffering and diseases and illnesses and difficulties and troubles that we experience. We're in a very interesting time now because we're at the verge of what's called the apocalyptic age. And as you will probably all know, the apocalypse has been defined from the dark side of it, meaning that it deals with calamities and disasters and conflagration and hellfire, brimstone, great losses of life, and so on, and the topsy-turviness that the world is going through, and it'll be turned upside down and so on. And so there's a real sense of disaster lurking everywhere. However, the other side of apocalypse is the true meaning of it, the original meaning of it, which is not the dark side, but the light side. And that's where my aim is, to bring that to light to you. And what it means is the unveiling of secret knowledge. And so this is the age in which consciousness is evolving to a higher level of functioning and a higher level of existence for us. And we're becoming more and more conscious beings as we are learning to become aware of this great knowledge that's been available to us from the beginning of our existence here on Earth. And this is a time that's being made available for us to learn it, and this is my job, to be how I would say, a commentator and a catalyst for bringing this change and new direction of life, in which the laws of the struggle for existence and the laws of natural selection and the domination and subjugation that rules the world changes into the laws of collaboration. Interestingly, I want to bring to bear for you a comment made by Buddha, which is interesting, that he really put his finger on a fundamental issue a fundamental piece of understanding that directs all of our attention to how we can become beings of light and bring this revelatory knowledge to ourselves. He said human suffering is inevitable, and the source of all suffering is attachment. And what we will be learning is what attachment means, how we stop it, how we reverse it, how we make ourselves into spiritual beings by reversing this enslaved way of life. I wanted to mention a very significant mystical point that was brought into the Western tradition, which had to do with the fact that at the outset of existence, God covered everywhere and was everything. In an act of love and mercy, this isness contracted itself to make space, and it made space for us, so to come into existence. It's by dint of creating this space that we were allowed to be created. You see, we're making space, we're reversing the attachment, and our job on earth here as spiritual beings is to emulate what God did, to be co-creators and learn how to make space to allow the influx of divine light to enter into our life, to give us the sustenance and support, as I've mentioned, from the invisible reality, to allow us to live and find that direction that's mentioned there, that every moment is set before us, life and death. Choose life, and so that we and our descendants may live, and that we may continue to go on living in a way that's fruitful, disease-free, healthy, whole, in truth and in freedom and in love. And I want to share that with you over the course of our time together. So I'm glad to introduce myself and to give you a direction and an aim in which we're following a course that I think will be very instrumental. And I've been sort of a pioneer in this work, which is a spiritual practice of using a mental resource that we're born with as the focus for finding our way to wholeness and to health and to healing. The root of that word of health has to do with the word holy. It comes from the same root in the English language. So we are following our direction to make ourselves into whole, healthy, healed human beings by following a direction of spirit that allows us to become unified and at one with ourselves and at one with ourselves in the world, and to find an immunity from illness and disease and suffering, which has been the lot of us for these past 5 millennia, as far as we know in recorded history. So with that, we're going to take up specific elements that will allow us to understand more about what attachment is and what we would do to reverse that experience that Buddha defined so clearly as the source of all suffering.